idea of the colloquium was beyond our cycle of friends on selected issues of topical and national significance. Nothing can be more befitting in celebrating Zayyanu, who is always brimming with ideas and who is forever engaged in conversations and discourses, mainly on how to uplift society. We are happy that the colloquium has come to stay and a great improvement on the last one. In 2017, our focus was on the role of culture and communication in deepening Nigeria's democracy. This year, the theme of the colloquium is the role of energy in national development. It is expected that the conversation this time will dwell on and provoke debates on the crucial, if not indispensable, role played by energy in national development. It is an indisputable fact that no community, society, or nation achieves and progresses without addressing the challenge of energy. It can also be easily argued that Nigeria, to an extent, is where we are today because we have not been able to decisively tackle the energy question. The array of experts, industry players, and stakeholders that constitute our panelists will no doubt dissect, interrogate, and ultimately do justice to the issues, while wishing us smooth and successful deliberations. On behalf of the convener and the organizing committee of the colloquium, I once again welcome you to Sokoto, the seat of the caliphate.
Consider it an honor to be invited to come to Sokoto, so I really look forward to it. Naturally, I strain myself to be here because the issue at stake is some of the reasons why we have some of the challenges that we have today. Energy is more like eating food. If you don't eat food, you don't grow. If you don't have energy, your economy will not grow. The second reason why I consider it nice to come here is when I got to know who the guest speaker is. And interestingly, Nuhu is a nationalist. Nuhu is a patriotic Nigeria who is willing to spend this energy that Nigeria moves to the next level. I remember he's also a very dedicated young man. What year was it? He ensured he had no choice because when he was doing his PhD, his boss told him that he must defend his PhD to me. So they actually had to bring me from the United States to go to Seoul to make sure that his PhD is worth what it is. And he has not disappointed me. So when you see your mentee being asked to come and give a keynote speaker, and then you have been invited to discuss what he's going to say, you say, oh, they want to put him on the line again. So I'm really proud to be here. Well, I do not want to say much, especially when your mentee is going to be speaking about the subject matter that you and him have talked about for almost a decade now. So I'm not going to steal the show. Without taking much ado, let me express my appreciation for the opportunity to be back to where I started this journey.
So we'll go by my presentation basically. We try to say, okay, how do we elicit a basic appreciation of what energy is all about from a simple perspective? And of course, development itself whether as a theoretical concept or as a social phenomenon, what does it entail? So we understand that, then we can easily draw a nexus between energy and national development. And then we can look at the global environment and see what is happening today in the global energy space. And we can then narrow down to our own environment in Nigeria to see how we faring with respect to what the professor mentioned, some of the critical enablers and determinants. And then we collectively elicit a conversation around policy discourse and what we need to do. Because there's a lot of anomaly with respect to even perception in the country. So we see as we go further that we have an inherent assumption that the only instrument of national development is government. And every day in Nigeria, you meet a minister, he say government. You meet a senator, he say government. Local government chairman, he say governor. Governor, he say government. Common man, he say government. And you get to wonder, who is really this government? So we are collectively government. And that means if everybody collectively decide to do the little bit that he or she is supposed to do, what happens? When we aggregate the smaller bits, that they give us the bigger output that we desire to have. And that is basically around this perspective that the whole conversation today will be centered. Okay. So this is basically in the simplest form what energy is all about. We all know. Energy is anything in simplest form that you need to be able to effect a change is energy in simple terms. Whatever you want to do, whether I want to live to this paper from point A here to here, is energy that allows me to do that. And like my professor mentioned, it's simply food. That is the simplest way to put what energy is all about. If you eat breakfast the way breakfast is supposed to be eaten, and you don't eat lunch, and you don't eat dinner, and there is an assumption that keeping everything constant, you walk at the normal rate an average human being is supposed to walk. The natural thing is that if you are someone that eats 3 square meals, you are not going to have the same energy profile as him. So that's exactly what happened. When we look at what happened here, all these scenarios are basically dissipating energy. From this truck, to this pusher, to these 2 young men, and then the solar radiation is all saying that, look, energy, in whatever form or whatever description it could be, is a critical, is the most important input to life processes. And that is why all the revolution that happened in the world with respect to civilization, right from agricultural age down to, even from Stone Age actually, Stone Age, agricultural age, you move to industrial age, and now we're in the ICT or technology age. It's all centered around how do we efficiently manage energy in a way and manner that can help us to make our life easy. So it's really a most important thing that we can't afford to neglect. And of course, several resources, like Professor mentioned. Now, the reason why we deliberately put this slide is because there's a fundamental problem. Renewable and non-renewable energy. So, that means this can be naturally replenished. For example, water or solar. No one knows when sun will end. Nobody knows in the world. Nobody knows when Atlantic Ocean will go dry. However, your oil, your gas, and your coal, and all these resources are completely non-replenishable. That means any day, anywhere in the world, you produce 1 barrel of oil. That barrel of oil has gone for life. The same thing with gas. The same thing with coal. And the same thing with all the sources, whether it's nuclear, uranium, all of that. So that means, from a national perspective, the management of non-renewable resources with respect to policy perspective and management of renewable resources will never be the same. If I want to simply put, you may choose to take it very lightly, issues around efficiency and optimality on the management of renewable resources, because they are always there. But these ones, they are not there. Once you touch one and you start producing it, just know that there will be a day when you go, it does not matter how big it is, there won't be anything. So that means every time you produce a barrel of oil equivalent, you have to know that it must be invested in something that is going to be sustainable and enduring with respect to changing the socio-economic landscape of a country, a community, and a society for shared prosperity. And all the discourse we have as a country today is simply around suboptimal and inefficient management of these resources. Okay, so this is basically to buttress what Professor mentioned. There is no contention at all. It is one of the most studied subjects in energy economics in the world. The causality or the correlation between GDP per capita and energy per capita, or simply put, GDP and energy per capita. And you can simply see. Now, if you look at where America is, this is Canada and US, look at them, and you can see that they have the highest GDP per capita. And that also corresponds to high energy usage per capita. So the expectation is that if you have more energy, if you consume more energy, naturally, there will be more economic activity. Because you have a car, you need to buy fuel for the car. I don't have a car, I don't need to buy fuel for my car. You have a house, you can afford, because of your economic capacity, probably you are in Sokoto here, during when it's not cold, you may probably want to buy air conditioning. These are all economic activities that make contribution into how much is produced in Nigeria that translates to what is called GDP. So there is no doubt about that at all. But what happened to us is that even though oil and gas industry is a mainstay of our economy, as an example, so every national energy policy aspiration will have, every economic development plan Nigeria should have, is supposed to be anchored on how can we use oil and gas to stimulate growth and development across other sectors of the economy. And here you are, even the oil and gas that you produce, you are simply, like we're going to see much later, you are simply a raw material producer. You produce oil and gas, you export them. This South Korea, when I was in South Korea, they have the second largest refinery in the world. That is a 5-ton refinery of 2.2 million barrels production capacity per day. They buy 500 out of our 2.1 million barrels every day and take it to South Korea. They will process it and sell it back to us as petrol. So we're going to see much of that as we continue on our discourse level. And of course, it will look at it globally. Of course, this is also trying to give us a very clearer perspective and picture with respect to what Professor mentioned before. What is the link? Because the moment you are not thinking from global perspective and see how does the issues between the trade war between Trump or US and China, what is the impact of that on Nigeria? As long as we are not doing that thinking, that means the train has already gone and left us. Because already now, the trade war between US and China has affected the economy of India to the level that already India's GDP growth for 2019 is being forecasted to contract by about 1.2%. Because the world is an interlinked system today. It's a connected system. What happened in Sokoto has an impact on what has an effect on Lagos. What happened in Lagos has an impact on Kano. And that is the only way development policies and strategies can be designed. So, what is simply trying to tell us in simple terms is that we could see that yes, the world is not primarily, up to the next 40 years, the world will still be in need of energy, or the world will be energy hungry. And we can see that for us that are dominantly oil and gas producers, we can see that yes, oil will going to still be relevant up to that time. And then gas also will be a very big issue. Coal too will still be a relevant element in the world. But we can see a very big threat to us. If you look at this point, this is renewable energy. You can see that in terms of growth rates, renewable energy has the fastest growth rates among all these energy systems. And this has a lot of implications for we that have oil and gas. So if I quickly put this in perspective, America used to be the #1 buyer of Nigeria's crude. Since 2016, the United States have not procured 1 barrel of oil from Nigeria because they now have shale oil and gas. So why do they need Nigeria's energy? They don't need it. Now, UK just announced a very aggressive renewable energy policy, which is hinged on the fact that by 2040, UK wants to have at least 65% of its energy mix to be from renewables. And they went further to also say that by 2030, vehicles in UK will no longer be using fossil fuel. There will be electric cars. So they don't need your oil and gas anymore. So that poses a lot of implication on us as oil and gas producers. Energy and food is a very critical element. Water too. You need energy, whether it's for agri, whether it's for whatever purpose you want to do in life, you need energy. Of course, electricity. That's a very big one. Sustainable development. So the conversation has to be around the interplay of these 3 factors. So what is the way forward? The youth take special interest in public governance in Nigeria. In 2050, we are going to be more popular than the United States of America. So of course, like I mentioned, one of the solutions that will help us to achieve shared prosperity on energy system is youth has to really take ownership. They have to take interest. They have to take interest in public governance. You don't have to contest any election. Just be interested. And the best way to be interested, please, there is technology now. There is app. Please channel a lot of energy. Don't spend all the time on social media, please. Take interest in simply Googling, trying to understand what is happening in your own system. Equip yourself with the knowledge. That is the only way you can change the narrative. And that is the reason, that's one of the essence of technology itself. At least you don't have to pay anybody. You can learn, there is all kind of information available in public space. And of course, women, we have to really find a way within the confinement of cultural provisions and religious doctrines to really, really make women to be productive members of society. They have to be. Yeah, that's a very, very key solution that will help us to drive that. And we'll see later. So in terms of policy optimization also, quickly, like Professor has mentioned, we really have to design market-oriented policies. And that means there must be sufficient economic incentive that can allow businessmen to invest money, make profits, and invest. Government has no business doing business. Government business is policy and regulation, allow businessmen to do business. Of course, for us in the oil and gas industry, LPG, deepening LPG, is the surest way we can change the narrative with respect to energy access and reverse the trend rather than using cooking wood or biomass to basically use more cleaner energy cooking systems like gas. We are of course doing that, we are aggressively pushing that. And of course, we have to grow mystery in the oil and gas industry. We must grow refining capacity, processing systems, petrochemicals. Those are the only things that can help us to grow. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, we must decentralize our energy production systems. We must change the structure of our energy mix. When you decentralize it, then it makes life a lot easier for you. At least even renewables now, from the economic point of view, research has made them to achieve a lot of price parity with fossil fuel. So you can actually do it like solar. So conclusively, of course, the importance of energy in driving national development aspirations is not anything that is in doubt. We have issues. Whether we can change the narrative, yes, we can. Whether it's late, we don't know how long God ordained we are going to live or Nigeria will live. But the clock is ticking very, very, very fast. The threats against us are enormous. Energy policies are changing rapidly. People are moving. Our population is huge. We have China gets what it got today simply because it turned its population into prosperity. But we are here allowing our population to be a poverty-ridden system. We really, really have to focus a lot more attention in making sure that we collectively design systems that allow society to function the way it functions. Governance has to be the way governance is supposed to be. It must be seen as a public service. Citizens must yearn for accountability and transparency in the way public service is run. Thank you very much.
Which is because we have a lot of press people here. I want them to emphasize positive discussion. Because it says something about governance of the energy sector which is very critical. And I think he said something about decentralization. And I think I mentioned it also with respect to comparative advantage. And he gave an example of Singapore and South Korea. They produce no oil, but they produce what you use. Let me make inference. Maybe we need to be thinking about using what we have and de-emphasize using what we don't have. And I want people to talk with respect to that. And finally, because my 2 minutes is almost gone, he emphasized the importance of inefficiency, ineffectiveness, inequitability, and unethical behavior in an energy sector that perhaps is making us to stand with centralization instead of decentralization. Perhaps maybe where we go for sustainable national development is to do our rethinking. Why should you generate electricity with solar in Sokoto and put it in the national grid? And generate electricity with gas and power and put it on the national grid? Those are governance that I think I want us to address some of the issues that he raised. And if you know that 40% of the energy you generated and put on the transmission line will be lost, translate it to this. If I use $100 million to generate electricity, 40 million of it will be lost. So I have to recover the 60 million. But does that mean, and I hope you are listening to me, does that mean we are not going to take care of the poor?
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the very engaging presentation. It's very important for us, I think, to be able to understand what energy culture is. Nigeria has to shape its energy culture, which is pretty much talking about its ideas and customs that actually shape the opinions and inform the decisions around the subject matter. So globally, we can see from what Doctor said that the global culture, energy culture, is actually proactive and preemptive. But our Nigerian global culture is reactive. And we know that for us to be able to plan for development, we have to be able to understand what is going on in the world in terms of energy and development. We can say that the energy sector globally is based on energy security, which is based on the 1973 oil embargo that happened in the world. This was a trigger for energy security in the world, where we realized that energy was in limited supply and there was economic fragility of the system. So we understood that certain countries had oil and we needed more energy resource and we needed it to be circulated around the world. So when we look at the energy culture of the world, it's based primarily on energy security. But the world actually functions on an energy mix. So while we're propagating clean energy globally, what we can see is the world still functions on traditional forms of energy. So countries like India still provide 79% of coal energy, even though countries like Germany are propagating that they will be able to go into full sustainable renewable energy by 2030, 2040. We can see that they still have about 23 nuclear plants, of which only 7 of them are to be closed within the next couple of years. And coal as well, they provide about 30 million tons of coal, and it's about 30 to 40% of the energy supply. So there's a paradoxical perspective for energy in the world. Paradox meaning that the world says it's going towards clean energy, but the world still relies on traditional energy sources. So what does that mean for us in Nigeria that actually has this energy source that is renewable and the energy source that is finite? How do we go about shaping and developing our energy sector in a way that we can see where the world wants to go, but the way the world actually functions?
Thank you. We have more. She has emphasized a point. It was about energy security. Gentle lady.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Standing on the existing protocol. Let's look inwards. Decentralization is the way to go. I cannot produce solar here. My people have not used it enough. You're telling me to put into the grid. No, No, but if I have enough capacity of solar power, I would be able to invite investors. And that we are looking for from Sokoto or Sokoto. We will see it just before our eyes. I think I admit on what he has presented, and I know that what we need is policy.
Time becomes a problem.
Have we planned as a nation? Have we moved out from our traditional form of energy? Nobody, until recently, knows that you can use gas, you can use energy to power our economy, power our industry. Nigeria as a body, I don't want to look at Sokoto alone. I want to look at Nigeria as a body. There are other forms of energy that we have been using. Is it friendly? Is it clean? We want to produce more. If we use our traditional form of energy, we find out that we pollute the environment.
If you look at this presentation, he talked about access and utilization of the energy we have. We produce a lot of crude oil, we produce a lot of gas, but we don't have access to it. We don't utilize it. All our crude goes for export, for other people to process it, to find it, turn it into other products, and send it back to us. Look at our natural gas out of Nigerian Energy. Most of it goes to other developed nations as a feedstock for them to produce what we now consume. So we must have that development planning that we can access and utilize what we have in terms of energy.
Now, the issue is this: in terms of renewables, we need to start thinking about community-based energy generation. There are clusters of communities to have their own energy generation. Because we have lots of things that we can do, as mentioned by the speaker, in terms of renewables. We've got solar, but then if we put them in clusters, can that work for us? So decentralization, we need to look at how that can boost even household usage, small and medium enterprises, how we can energize and in fact incentivize investment into the renewable sector. Without that, then we can't be talking about using energy to fight poverty. And I think that's key to look at sufficiency, security, and how we can use that actually to create jobs. Thank you very much.
What I think we should do is to develop a framework. Let us develop a framework with all these factors laid down as on two dimensions. And let us use as a third dimension, say the z-axis, for example. You can use time or something like that. And look at everything and feel those cells. You see that some are important, some are not too important, and so on and so forth. And when you say important, important from what perspective? From what perspective? From the fact that it's close to me, from the fact that it's secured for me, and all those kinds of things. So, and one of the reasons why I said this is that all of us have talked about nature. See how many of us are here. Each of us is an individual. Why did God not make us as one bunch? So, let us copy God's model. Many of us, many factors. If you start interviewing each of us now, each person has something to say. Each person has his or her concerns. And all will now need to be addressed. So when we have this framework, you will see that all these things will come up and they'll be addressed. Please, let me just say something. All of us talk about waste. And
you have much opportunity. You have time to address your new thoughts. Let's just move on so that you won't be the only one out. Thank you very much.
If you look at Nigeria spatially, there is no any form of mineral resource that we do not have. Energy resource, that we do not have. In the north, we have the solar. In the south, we have the gas. And there is hydro in the center of the country. So you have to realize the problem now is how we manage or mismanage these vital resources given to us by God. If you look at, for example, the issue of decentralization, I think this is something we need to take very, very serious.
because in Sokoto we do not have shortage of solar radiation. In fact, we even have it for sale for whoever wanted to buy. We can, if we decentralize our energy sector, solar energy will be developed in Sokoto. Industries will come to Sokoto and invest. Jobs will be created. Poverty will be reduced. And the environment will be cleaner. The issue of climate change, particularly around the area or maybe having an adverse effect to our environment, will be greatly reduced.
Rural electrification is supposed to be the area where states can come in and liberate themselves. But the Act says there is Rural Electrification Agency that's the one to be able to coordinate nationally whatever happens. And that was why the governor of Sokoto, the governor of Sokoto at one point, there was the same governor, I heard him complaining at a meet that he wanted to do a lot, but this act was happening. So if I'm going to say one thing is, this colloquium, the communique should make it very clear that the Reform Act of 2005 needs to be amended so that we will be liberated.
Aptly captures the mood of Sokoto State government. That is, looking on how to participate effectively in energy delivery to our people and the nation as a whole. The state government, under able leadership of His Excellency Right Honorable Engr Zayyanu Tambari, in keeping with this, established this Ministry of Energy just last year. The ministry has just been lifted to Ministry of Energy and Petroleum Resources as a forward-looking approach to meet the yearnings and aspirations of our people and for the sustainable development of the state with energy as a key player. The state government, as part of efforts to meet demands of the good people of Sokoto, the IPP of 38 megawatts that has reached about 95% stage of completion is expected to be completed and commissioned very early in the year 2020, inshallah. As mentioned by one of our distinguished discussants, the state government, in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Power, the Kaduna Electric, the Transition Company of Nigeria, Africa Finance Corporation, and private company is planning to build a 10 megawatt 3D solar project on Yabo Shagari Kayeko feeder. Similarly, Federal Ministry of Science and Technology, in collaboration with state government and other partners, is planning a 30 megawatts of wind system very soon to be located in 3 strategic areas of the state. I'm happy to also report that so far, few towns and villages in Sokoto located in Yabo, that is Torakawa, and Kordula in Gudu local government are already enjoying electricity through solar powered system. Let me therefore seize this golden opportunity to invite investors into Sokoto State who will be willing to invest in energy. The state government, through the ministry, is ever ready to provide an enabling environment for that to thrive, inshallah. Finally, I wish to congratulate the convener of this colloquium, Engr Zayyanu Tambari Yabo, the chairman of the forum, Professor Dari, coordinator, the discussants, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen here, for making the forum not only lively, but very, very successful. Thank you very much.
Participants at the National Colloquium observed that the first is the key highlights from colloquium presentation. We observed that there is a correlation between the GDP per capita and the energy consumption per capita is positive. Like our scholar said, it means that when the energy consumption per capita goes up, the GDP per capita also goes up. Secondly, we also observed that there is the reality of an intertwine between poverty and energy policy of a nation. We also observed that though oil is still the most vital source of our energy used today, renewable energy is on the upswing, especially in developed parts of the world. We also observed that Nigeria has not even attained up to 10% of energy consumption per capita when compared to our counterpart in Europe and America. We also observed that development is any improvement effort put in place to change the narrative of a people, while sustainable development has now become, though the reverse, but more desirable version of our development. We also observed that energy is the food that is needed for the nation to grow, and it encompasses all spheres of our national life, including security, development, and economic growth. We also observed that in Nigeria, the number one distortion in our energy structure is the over-centralization of our energy generation, transmission, and distribution. Whereas in other climes, the policy of regional cooperative advantage is being applied to obtain effective and efficient energy mix, which is developed and utilized from the respective local and tertiary sources. And we also observed that the biggest challenge in our energy development today is poor leadership and poor corporate governance. Yet, we also observed that our public office holders who are responsible for energy governance are never held accountable. Citizens never demand for transparency and accountability as a right, nor equip themselves with the knowledge which is now readily available by just the click of the computer. And we also observed that our women are never or rarely incorporated in our development policy formulation. And this is also applicable
in the energy sector. We also observed that there is no sufficient economic incentives by government to encourage investment in the energy sector. And lastly, our observation was that even the crude oil energy source, where we have a comparative advantage, is not being processed here, but exported in its crude form. This has contributed to the low energy consumption per capita in Nigeria. On a conclusive note, our recommendation, it is concluded that energy has a positive impact in our lives. It's also a conclusion during this colloquium that while energy is a necessary component of human development, it is not in all situations that an increased availability of energy resources turns out to be positive. And it was also concluded that the world is not lacking diverse energy sources, but energy inclusiveness and shared prosperity has been a critical issue that impaired universal energy access. It also concluded that energy policy dictates most emphasis energy mix to reduce risk exposure and enhance energy security. It was also concluded that despite our huge natural resources, that the positive impact of energy on most human development indices is translated to overall benefits to citizens. This has to do with the political will to build institutions that will ensure that development gains from impact of our energy are far-reaching. It was also concluded and recommended that public policy must emphasize on energy access and reducing energy poverty and increase per capita energy consumption. It was also recommended that oil and gas industry value chain integration with emphasis on midstream development to drive full value addition to the economy is desired to stimulate development. It was also recommended that government must have a realistic model to incentivize the bottom of the pyramid. And during the discussion, it was recommended that the constitutional amendments removing the energy governance from the exclusive list to the concurrent list is needed so that regional governments can develop energy policies that best suit their peculiar local energy needs. Another recommendation, which we are not able to print, but we're seeing here, is that we have to ensure that the positive impact of energy on most human development indices is translated to overall benefits to citizens. This has to do with the political will to build institutions that will ensure that developmental gains from impact of energy are far-reaching. And it is also recommended that citizens' participation, especially youth and women, in public governance can drive inclusive energy development and ensure shared prosperity. And the final conclusion that it is, and conclusion and recommendation is that it is highly recommended that the National Colloquium should be made a yearly event and involving wider stakeholders.
Is in continuation of the tradition and the legacy of the founders of the Sokoto Caliphate. The founders of Sokoto Caliphate, Sheikh Osman Danfodio, Abdullahi Gwandu, and Muhammad Bello, and their lieutenants, were actually scholars, were intellectuals. So the Sokoto Caliphate is not a product of military conquest. It's a product of intellectual conquest. And that is the reason why that legacy has survived till today as a critical factor to be reckoned with all over the world. And it is in continuation of that legacy that we seek to perpetuate intellectual gatherings of this nature to appraise and discuss pertinent issues of national development
so that through creating awareness, we can generate the right momentum for society to change. Nobody knows who is going to be anywhere tomorrow in this gathering. In this hall, I know people 20 years ago here who are not in the position that they are today. Today, they are very important personalities. So it means from logical correlation, from extrapolation and interpolation as a mathematician, I know that in the next 20 years, many, many people today will play different roles that they are playing here today. So we believe by creating the right intellectual awareness, we are generating the critical mass for change in this country. So it is not talk shop, it is not theory. We cannot afford not to talk about national issues. We cannot afford to be silent. We cannot afford to be quiet. We will not keep quiet. We will continue to talk and talk and talk until the necessary action begin to emanate from the issues that we are talking about. If you want to change reality, change the people's consciousness, change their being, change their worldview. If you change their worldview, then they will begin to act differently. And when they act differently, a different result, a different outcome will be achieved. Let me sincerely thank all of you. Everybody that is here is important. Some names have been mentioned here, some names have not been mentioned. In fact, not up to 10 names have been mentioned. And when I checked the register, we have 435 people here. I cannot call each and every one of you by name, but we will try from the register to send you a thank you note to your respective emails and phone numbers. We want to thank the Honorable Commissioner of Energy, Alhaji Aliyu Dandim Mahe, and the Ministry of Energy, Sokoto State, for identifying with this program. Indeed, your presence today have lent credence to this occasion, and we look forward to continue to collaborate with you and your ministry in achieving your laudable objectives. Let me thank especially the chairman of the occasion. He missed 3 flights until we crafted an ingenious solution for him to be in Sokoto against all odds. He has demonstrated extraordinary energy. He is close to 70 years or over 70 years, as young as he looks. And he is active, and in fact, he is one of the most busiest persons in the world. I'm sure his calendar from now to 2025 is occupied. Let me thank the keynote speaker. Mahmoud, Dr. Habib Nuhu is somebody who I share so many things in common. And one of the things we share in common is our burning desire to make a difference so that we can become a reference to what can be done to change things. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter what you have or what you don't have. If you are on the floor, you are lying down, sweep the floor, do something. There is no excuse for inaction. If you don't have a leg, if you don't have a hand, you can still do something. You can at least nod your head, but do something. Keep doing something. Dr. Habib has been in 3 countries in the last 7 days, including Kano, to see his aged father who is almost 90 years. He is probably one of the most busiest persons in Nigeria today. He is in so many high-level commitments and engagements. He has only 5 hours to spare to be here, and because of that, he had to take a private jet to come to Sokoto to deliver this lecture. Alhaji Ilu is leaving the country this evening. He has to detour and come to Sokoto. We thank you very much. And Rouse came from Aberdeen, Scotland. We thank you very much. I did a course with him sometime in January, and it's one of the most instructive courses I have ever attended. So we thank you very much, sir, and wish you safe journey back to Aberdeen. My boss, Mr. Uti, he's my father actually. He groomed me. All that I am today, technically, he put me through. And today he's retired, and he's not tired. He was in Sokoto for the first colloquium, and he's here again. We thank you very much for coming. Awalo Anwar was my mentor in the university, was my president in Noesa, and he's a source of inspiration to many generations. And today, he is a critical stakeholder in the reform process of the educational sector in Nigeria. Awalo Anwar, we thank you very much. Engineer Chichi is my contemporary. We were in the same class, do different arms. I was in chemical, she was in civil engineering. But we were very close since the university days, over 20 years ago. And we thank you very much. She is very active in the Nigerian Society of Engineers and one of the leading lights for the engineering reform in this country. We thank you very much. Dr. Dankani, last colloquium, he came here as a guest, but we have to co-opt him as a discussant, which he gladly did. But today he is here on his own right as a discussant. So we thank you very much, and we wish that we'll continue to have you. Garbati is my colleague, and we have worked in so many committees. We thank you so much for your incisive contribution and your dynamism. I am saving the last, my professor, Sam Sunday Adefila. Many people did not know that he is a professor of energy. He is one of the leading lights in energy, not only in Nigeria, but globally. He delivered an inaugural lecture on energy 20 years ago at Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, that attracted audience. I still have that lecture, sir. And that inspired me to branch into energy. My research was on energy. He was my research supervisor. And we studied the rainfall cycle as a heat engine. And it was a novel research. And today, I'm glad that he's a discussant in energy by his students whom he taught several years ago. The day is fast spent, and let me leave us with a message of hope that this moment is indeed our history, and tomorrow is the history of the coming generation. If we succeed in highlighting those things that lead to development, rather than those things that do not lead to development, then and only then we will have succeeded in leaving behind a befitting legacy to the coming generation. In conclusion, as I said last colloquium, I'm going to conclude it the same way in our determination to build a new nation worthy of emulation. There will be no hesitation. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.